Shares of a Chinese robot maker that builds machines shaped like human beings closed their first day of trading up 460% after retail investors tried to buy 5,500 times more stock than the company actually offered. Lambert Willingham here for the Daily Share on Wednesday, August 19th, 2026. My glasses are clean, my coffee is black, and my patience for other people's paperwork is, as always, finite. Closer to home, the courts and city councils have been busy attaching dollar figures to disputes that started out as simple arguments. Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison sued Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Tuesday, trying to force him to sign an extradition warrant he has apparently been sitting on. The warrant concerns Christian Castro, a 52-year-old immigration and customs enforcement agent who has been held in the Cameron County Jail since late May on Minnesota charges of felony assault and false reporting. Castro is accused of firing a bullet through the front door of a Minneapolis home during a January enforcement operation, wounding a resident in the leg, then telling investigators he had been attacked with a shovel and a broom handle. Ellison's filing warns that under Texas's statutory limits, Castro could walk free within days if Abbott does not act. And prosecutors note that jail phone logs show Castro discussing buying property and getting married just across the border in Mexico. Abbott's office and the Cameron County Sheriff, who is also named in the suit, both declined to comment. Georgetown School Board voted unanimously to send a tax rate election to November voters in the name of giving staff a raise. The measure, Proposition A, would raise the overall property tax rate 6 cents to $1.1106 per $100 of valuation, combining a 9-cent increase to maintenance and operations with a 3-cent cut to debt service. District officials say that works out to $7.97 more a year for the median homeowner, a number precise enough to suggest someone ran it through a calculator twice. The plan is projected to raise $17.5 million, though $9.1 million of that gets clawed back under the state's recapture formula, leaving $8.4 million locally to fund 3% raises for teachers and hourly staff, 2% for administrators, and a bump to a $59,000 starting salary. The superintendent says the district has balanced its budget the last 2 years, but warns that a no vote means cutting programs and services. El Paso City Council adopted a $658.6 million general fund budget Tuesday on a 6-2 vote, after more than 4 hours of debate that changed very little. The council also approved a property tax rate of 79.8 cents per $100 of valuation, raising the municipal portion of the average homeowner's bill by about $105 a year. City Manager Dion Mack's original proposal got trimmed by roughly $6.5 million, a rounding error against a budget that size. The two dissenting votes from council members Lily Limon and Cynthia Boyar-Trejo came in part because the city charter mandates a 15% pay raise for council members themselves, which Limon cited as a reason she could not support the package. Mayor Renard Johnson urged colleagues to finalize the budget before the statutory deadline, noting everyone had already had months to review the numbers. Harris County and El Paso County joined a multi-state lawsuit Monday against new federal rules tying Homeland Security grant money to how local governments run their elections. The suit, filed alongside governments in Tennessee and Ohio, argues the Department of Homeland Security exceeded its authority by requiring changes to election verification procedures as a condition of anti-terrorism funding. County attorneys say complying would cost millions in unbudgeted overhead and intrude on election mechanics that are supposed to be a local matter. The lawsuit asks for an injunction blocking the federal government from withholding existing emergency management and counterterrorism funds while the case proceeds. Funds, the counties say, pay for emergency communications and disaster response equipment. Federal officials have not yet responded in court. The economic ledger today ranges from tariffs paused at the last possible minute to an ice cream company that copied the wrong cardboard box. The on-again, off-again tariff fight with Canada is off again for now. President Trump announced late Tuesday, less than 2 hours before a midnight deadline, that the United States will pause planned 50% tariffs on Canadian goods for 3 days, while negotiators finalize a tentative framework. The levies would have hit roughly $20 billion worth of Canadian imports, including spirits, energy, steel, and agricultural products. Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's teams say they have reached an agreement in principle, though Canadian officials are careful to note the technical drafting is not finished. Industry groups on both sides had warned the tariffs would mean higher retail prices and retaliation against American exports. So the 3-day reprieve is being treated as good news, provided it lasts longer than 3 days. Global fuel markets are showing some strain, with the diesel crack spread, the margin refiners make turning crude into diesel, hitting a record $102 a barrel, about triple pre-war levels. 3 of the world's 4 major refining centers are operating under severe constraints, leaving Gulf Coast refineries running flat out to cover international demand. Drone strikes on Russian energy infrastructure have knocked out roughly 40% of that country's refining capacity, and Moscow has responded by banning diesel exports through January of 2027. Add in shipping disruptions near the Strait of Hormuz from ongoing military activity, and refined fuel is getting more expensive right as harvest season and autumn heating demand arrive. Crude stockpiles are keeping raw oil prices in check, but that is cold comfort if what you actually need is diesel. Unitary Robotics, the Chinese humanoid robot maker, made its trading debut on Shanghai's Star Market Wednesday, and shares closed up more than 460% from the offer price, taking the company's implied market value to roughly $9.1 billion. The offering raised $900 million, and retail investors put in orders exceeding available shares by more than 5,500 times before trading even opened. Unitary is the first Chinese humanoid robotics firm to list on a mainland exchange, and industry data credits it with shipping more than 5,500 humanoid robots last year, about 37% of global commercial volume, on net profits of 278 million yuan. The company builds both 4-legged and 2-legged robots for warehouses, factories, and consumer research. Analysts are already calling the listing a valuation benchmark for physical AI hardware, a phrase that assumes the machines will eventually do something. A federal judge granted final approval to Google's $700 million settlement over Play Store antitrust claims brought by state attorneys general and consumers. Google will put $630 million into a consumer restitution fund and $70 million towards state penalties and administrative costs, resolving allegations that it ran an illegal monopoly over Android app billing that inflated fees for consumers and developers. Anyone who bought an app or made an in-app purchase through the Play Store between August 2016 and September 2023 is eligible for automatic credits or cash. Google also has to open up alternative billing options and make it easier to install competing app stores on Android for several years. The company admitted no wrongdoing, the traditional way of paying $700 million for something you supposedly did not do. Utah-based keto ice cream brand Rebel Creamery filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy after a federal court ordered it to pay $23.8 million for copying a competitor's packaging. The company's own filing lists about $13.78 million in assets against $23.85 million in liabilities, a gap created almost entirely by the judgment itself. United States District Judge Eric Comite ruled in July that Rebel intentionally infringed on the trade dress of Van Leeuwen, copying its minimalist pastel cardboard pints and black script lettering closely enough to confuse shoppers in the freezer aisle. Van Leeuwen sued back in 2021, and the judge awarded it $23.785 million of Rebel's historical profits. Rebel still sells through Walmart, Target, and Kroger while it appeals and lists the judgment as a disputed liability. Costco announced a partnership with non-profit insurer Escan Group to sell co-branded Medicare Advantage and Medicare Supplement plans to warehouse members. The retailer will start in select regional markets before expanding nationally in future enrollment periods, though neither company disclosed pricing or premium details. Escan already covers more than 300,000 members across several Western states, and Costco executives say the plans will fold in pharmacy savings and care coordination starting with the fall enrollment window. It is the latest retail chain trying to turn a pharmacy counter into an insurance office. Beyond the ledgers, primary season produced a few winners, and the freezer aisle produced a recall. Representative Harriet Hageman won the Republican Senate nomination in Wyoming Tuesday, clearing her path to succeed retiring Senator Cynthia Lummis. Hageman, who had Donald Trump's endorsement, beat 4 challengers, including former Kirby Mayor Sam Mead. She is best known nationally for unseating Liz Cheney in the 2022 primary, and she will now face Democrat James Byrd in November in a state that has not elected a Democrat to the Senate since 1962. The race is part of a broader shakeup in Wyoming, where the governorship, the state's lone House seat, and this Senate seat are all open at once for the first time in more than 30 years. Florida State Representative Angie Nixon pulled off an upset in the Democratic Senate primary, beating retired Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman by nearly 12 points. Nixon, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, did it on less than $1 million raised, against a candidate who spent $9 million of the $16 million he brought in. Vindman is best known for testifying in the 2019 impeachment hearings over Ukraine military aid. Nixon advances to face Republican Senator Ashley Moody in November, while in the concurrent governor's race, Republican Byron Donalds won his primary with 47% of the vote and will face Democrat David Jolly to succeed the term-limited Ron DeSantis. Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream issued a nationwide recall of several Outshine fruit bar flavors after customers reported finding glass inside the frozen bars. The recall covers strawberry, watermelon, grape, tangerine, and black cherry 6-count boxes, along with the 24-count variety packs from specific production batches. The company says no injuries have been reported and the recall is precautionary, and it is urging anyone holding the affected batch numbers to toss them or take them back for a refund. Regulators note that glass in food carries an obvious laceration risk, and production has been paused while the company hunts for the source of the fragments. Alaska's top 4 primary sent incumbent Republican Senator Dan Sullivan and Democratic former Representative Mary Peltola through to the general election, setting up one of the more competitive Senate races in the country. Alaska runs all 16 candidates on one nonpartisan ballot, with the top 4 advancing to a ranked choice runoff in November, and this cycle's field notably included a nonpartisan logger who also happens to be named Dan Sullivan. In the governor's race, Former State Representative Jonathan Christ Tompkins and former State Senator Tom Begich were two of the four who advanced out of a field of 34 in the contest to replace term-limited Governor Michael Dunleavy. Officials still have to finish counting mail and rural ballots before certifying the field. ABC sued the Federal Communications Commission on Tuesday, accusing the agency of retaliating against the network by forcing early license renewal hearings for its 8 owned and operated stations. The Disney-owned network is asking a federal court for a restraining order, arguing the reviews amount to unconstitutional, content-based retaliation against its news coverage. The dispute traces back to comments from FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, who has said the Commission is examining whether broadcasters' diversity and inclusion hiring policies violate federal anti-discrimination rules. ABC says the agency is using its licensing power to pressure editorial decisions, while the FCC maintains it has the statutory authority to check whether license holders are serving the public interest before renewal. What stays with me is Rebel Creamery, which now owes a competitor $23.8 million for making its ice cream boxes look too similar. Pastel cardboard, black script, the works. I assume the freezer aisle is about to become a design crime scene, with every dairy brand hiring forensic typographers to make sure their font does not rhyme with anyone else's. Eventually, someone patents the color beige, then the pint shape itself, then presumably cold, at which point the entire frozen food section stands trial for resembling itself. Georgetown's tax increase works out to $7.97 a year for the median homeowner, a figure specific enough that someone clearly ran it through a calculator twice before printing it on a ballot. That is the shear for today. Lambert Woollingham still trying to work out how a robot company gets valued at $9 billion before anyone has confirmed it can walk in a straight line. The day has been shorn. Until tomorrow.